Welcome to World Missions University's Teaching Techniques, Ministry 113. This is Lesson 6, Teaching Methods. Teaching methods are the ways in which teachers share information with students. The information itself is known as the content. How that content is shared in a classroom depends on the teaching method. In preparation for this class, you should read the following: Teacher and Staff Development, Book 2, the chapter entitled Increasing Student Learning. Also read these handouts: 150 Teaching Methods, Lesson Methodologies, Direct Instruction, and Discussions. By the time you finish with this class, you will demonstrate each of the teaching methods presented. We begin with the most common teaching method known as direct instruction, or more commonly as lecture. It is so common in some places in the world, teachers are called by the title of lecturer. Lecture is an arrangement in which teachers share information directly with students, with roots going back to the ancient Greeks. Lecture is a familiar form of information sharing, but it is not without its drawbacks. It has been overused and abused, and it is often the method used when teachers don't know or aren't familiar with other avenues of presentation. Right now, you are listening to a form of direct instruction, a recorded presentation. Direct instruction requires three requirements or principles. The first is that you know and respond to the background knowledge of the learner. You have to know where the student is in order to give them direction as to where they should be. This is necessary for an effective lecture. Secondly, the teacher needs to have a clear understanding of the material. This is absolutely necessary in being able to explain it to others. Finally, the physical design of the room and the placement of students impact the effectiveness of a lecture. We will talk later about physical impairments, but certainly you would want the student who is visually impaired to be in a place where they might see more clearly. Direct instruction also has its disadvantages. As we mentioned, it is one of the oldest teaching methods and is therefore based on old learning theories like we must learn simple tasks before complex ones, and only measurable learning is worthwhile. Determining the student's prior knowledge is difficult. The teacher may be unaware of why particular students cannot learn. As an example, this lesson is produced with no knowledge on my part of who you, the student, is. Direct instruction only works for a small percentage of students, not for the majority, such as students who have other than verbal intelligence or other cultural worldviews. But direct instruction continues to work effectively in many situations. The advantages are first that the teacher controls the timing of the lesson. The students are physically easy to monitor. The teacher controls what will be learned and who will learn it. It's best for teaching to the middle. We will discuss this concept later. Finally, direct instruction is best for information for which there is only one right answer, and that the answer is relatively simple, such as biblical truths and doctrines. These can be taught efficiently and honestly by using direct instruction. Despite the disadvantages, direct instruction can be used effectively. Remember to choose a concept for which direct instruction is appropriate. Students must know what is coming. Give them the big picture, including what they will be learning, in what order, and how much time each section will take. Speak clearly, with varied tone and speed. This can be a death knell for speakers who cannot put interest into their voices. In fact, I once knew a teacher who only used direct instruction in a monotone without ever changing their volume or tone. Ugh. Enhance direct instruction with visuals and activities. Frequently ask questions to check for comprehension. These questions should be low-level memory, question-response evaluation, or Socratic method type questions. Do you remember how many books are in the New Testament? Another way to improve direct instruction is called fire alarm. This requires you to limit the number of concepts within a single lesson to 1 or 2 at the elementary level and 3 to 5 at the secondary level. Then use the 10-2 strategy, which means 10 minutes of lecture and a 2-minute break for processing. And during the 2-minute break, ask students several open-ended questions. What have you learned so far in this lesson? Why is this important information? How does this information relate to any information we have learned previously? How do you feel about your progress so far? How does this data apply to other situations? These questions can be answered individually, in small group discussions, or as part of whole class interactions. Another method is called discussions. Discussions can be used as a written or oral expression of different points of view. It is best used on concepts without a clear answer or one which allows for opinions. Doctrine would not be a good topic on which to use the discussion method. Discussions must include sufficient background knowledge to avoid a pooling of the group's ignorance. In the case of a topic with little shared background information, discussion may motivate active research by a group. You will notice a higher retention of information over reading or lecture, especially from those who actively participate in a discussion. However, there are disadvantages. We have observed that people who state opinions in a public forum are less likely to change those opinions later. In the case of discussions, learning means changing, and change can be hard emotionally and psychologically, especially in a group setting. One strategy of using discussion is called round robin. In this setting, each student has an opportunity to share some information or ideas in a small group format. Everyone must participate equally and taps into the collective wisdom of the group. Another strategy is interviewing. This format may include the personal interview in which one person talks with another person. It may also involve the group interview in which several people talk with a single individual. Another strategy is brainstorming. This will generate a lot of ideas, often without regard for quality, about a single topic. This method is particularly appropriate at the start of a lesson to tap into the background knowledge students may or may not have about a topic. Effective brainstorming must be governed by 4 basic rules. Generate as many ideas as possible. The more, the better. There is no evaluation of any single idea or group of ideas. There is no criticism about whether an idea is good or bad. Zany, wild, and crazy ideas are encouraged and solicited. Individuals are free to build upon the ideas of others. A final strategy is to invite an expert opinion on a topic in to facilitate a discussion. There are many other teaching methods. Let's review a few. Reading information can be in the form of required reading, independent reading, or supplemental reading. Audiovisual presentations can be in the form of slides, movies, film strips, PowerPoint slides, photographs, illustrations, videos, or overhead transparencies. In contrast to a lecture, most of the information is presented visually rather than orally. In a demonstration, students witness a real or simulated activity in which you use materials from the real world. These materials may include artifacts and objects used by individuals in a specific line of work. For example, microscopes for a biologist, barometer for a meteorologist, a transit for a surveyor, or a word processing program for a writer. Using observation allows students to watch an event or occurrence take place firsthand, but care must be taken as sometimes unexpected and unplanned events happen over which you may have little control. Field trips are any out-of-classroom excursions designed for students to see and learn in an appropriate setting, such as a museum or cultural exhibit. Learning by teaching demonstrates that concepts are internalized so much that the student can now teach the concept themselves. Graphic organizers are a pictorial representation of the relationships that exist between ideas. They show how ideas are connected and how ideas are related to each other. Problem-solving activities occur in the class, in small groups, or individuals where they are given problem or a series of problems and are directed to find an appropriate solution. These can include problems for which the teacher may not have a preordained answer. With independent practice, the student uses previously learned material on a specific academic task, such as using the rules of hermeneutics to correctly interpret a new scripture. Debriefing is usually conducted at the conclusion of a lesson. It is a question and answer type of activity. It allows students to condense and coalesce their knowledge and information as a group or the whole class. It is also an active thinking process. With modeling, the teacher will model the behavior students are to duplicate within an activity and encourage students to parallel your behavior in their own activity. Students may also model appropriate behavior for each other. Role-playing is an important method to learn. With role-playing, the student or students take on the role of a specific individual, a historical person, for example, and acts out the actions of that person as though he were actually that person. This allows the students to develop a feeling for and an appreciation of the thoughts and actions of an individual. Role plays are typically short, lasting for a maximum of 15 minutes, and best when 2 or more students engage in a dialogue about a specific event or circumstance. Keep the directions you provide to a minimum. This is a wonderful opportunity for students to capitalize on their creativity. A good example may be Paul and Silas while they were in bonds in prison. Simulations are activities in which students are given real-life problem situations and asked to work through those situations as though they were actually a part of them. Their characteristics may include abstractions of real-life situations. These provide opportunities for you to bring the outside world into the classroom. The emphasis of this kind of activity is on decision making. Students have opportunities to make decisions and follow through on those decisions. The roles in simulations run parallel to those in real life, a mother, a father, a child. The rules are simple, uncomplicated, and few in number. Typically run 2 or more rounds, opportunities to make decisions more than once. Special projects are opportunities to create original designs, models, or structures to illustrate an important point or content fact. Their formats may be mobiles, dioramas, shadow boxes, posters, newspapers, brochures, flyers, letters to the editor, collages, or 3-dimensional models. Skill practice will provide students with an opportunity to apply their newly learned skills in a true-to-life experience. The emphasis here is on the use of those new skills. Guided practice is much like skill practice. Here, students are allowed to experience all the events of a learning situation. Work is done individually or collectively, and the teacher is a facilitator and a cheerleader. Reflective inquiry is student-initiated and student-controlled. Here, individual students are encouraged to select a topic they want to investigate further. In so doing, they pose a series of questions that they want to answer on their own. The questions are typically higher order questions and emphasize a variety of divergent thinking skills. For the next lesson, read Teacher and Staff Development, Book 2, the following chapters: Creative Impact, Critical Thinking in Spiritual Development, and Mentoring.